Good morning, y'all, and welcome to episode number 36 of the Boonafide Experience podcast. I'm your host, Kyle. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to watch this video. I'm glad you're here. It is 2 in the morning on November 6th, so we are going to do our best with making this recording. I already tried once, one recording failed, so we're going to try it again. Bear with me. Today's guest we have Ashes, or if you've known him on social media, his name is thyAshes or Nick. He is the current UYU Esports general manager and Gears of War coach. His previous accolades: he is a 22-time champion in console esports. He is the most winning. He is the winningest console esports champion in history, which is pretty badass, man. And also, where I actually personally found out about Nick was watching him on the Optic Vision series when he coached that just dominating roster for those couple seasons. And so I knew when I saw him, I just had to have him on the show. We talk a lot of different things: his childhood, some of the struggles of like esports then versus now. You know what it takes to be a good coach. You know what are some of the best times, what are some of the tough times. And really where he's currently at today. There's a lot of nuggets of wisdom along the way. A lot. Good morning, good afternoon, Nick. How you doing, man?
I am doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. It's been nice here in Texas. I think you're in Texas as well, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
that North Dallas area.
Yeah, dude. It's been how's the weather been up there?
It's getting, let's see, it's today it's 63. Yesterday was in like the mid 50s. So it's
Hmm.
starting to get that like winter chill, but it's still like, it's Texas. So it can never make up its mind what it wants to be. I'm pretty sure tomorrow is supposed to be like 74 again. So like a dice roll of what you're going to get weather wise.
Yeah, I'm down here in Austin, so it's same thing, man. Like it's
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we get like summer and then we get summer and then slightly less summer and then like 3 weeks of just perfect weather throughout the entire year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's literally how that's like you get like summer, slightly less summer, and then winter and slightly less winter, and then
Right.
like repeat.
Yeah, there's two seasons. There's
Yeah.
just two different shades of each season. So
Except for those random days where it'll like be like sunny and you'll be wearing shorts and a shirt, and then it'll be snowing like 3 hours later.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Texas has definitely been a learning experience.
Bro, gotta ask, like, when did you move down here?
Let's see. I think so we moved here because of Optic, and I think I moved. It was December of 2017. I want
Mhm.
to say. I think it was December 2017.
Bro. Yeah. So you've been here for a little bit. I mean, you get it. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
I'm
yeah,
I'm starting to be a Texan
yeah.
a little bit.
Have you started saying y'all yet?
I actually said y'all before I came here because I lived on the eastern shore of Maryland. So like it
Gotcha.
was a little, I don't want to say country. Like we had like a beach resort and then it was just farmland. So like, being that I wasn't coming there for vacation,
Yeah.
summertime you kind of speak a little bit differently with all the tourists, and then during the school year and stuff, it's y'all and
Yeah.
maybe not howdy, but it's
Yeah, that's a stretch.
it's a little bit more country. So that was like I think I fit in better because I was already in my repertoire of words. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't as it softened the blow. We'll
yeah,
call it that.
exactly.
Yeah,
I knew
man.
what it meant when someone started saying it, or like calling me darling or honey. Like I was used to that kind of stuff.
Right. Right, exactly. You're fixing to, like that's another one down here. Like we have some where I work, we actually have some California. It's a California based company and they just absolutely drives them nuts when we say we're fixing to do something. Like what? Like bro, what the fuck does that even mean? Like like bro, we're just fixing to do it, man. Just not right now. Like well, cool, man. I know we kind of hopped in there, but kind of give a quick intro, man. Like who are you? Like, what do you do, man?
So my name is Nick. I go by Ashes in the esports world, and I am a professional coach and esports manager. I'm currently the general manager for UYU, and I coach their Gears of War team. I coached the same team under Optic Gaming and NRG, and Denial Esports. We've been kind of around for a little bit, and I was also the assistant GM for Optic when I was there. So that management and coaching side, player development side of esports is where I call home.
Dude, that's fantastic, man. So I mean, that's and I if I think I read your Twitter bio right, you're probably the most winningest coach. Is that
It's self-counted.
okay?
So like there might be some historian out there who can like correct me in terms of like the Halo days are the ones that I'm not entirely sure about. I went
Gotcha.
back and I looked and I didn't see anybody who had more because I'm currently at 22 trophies. So I didn't see anybody who, and that's like major event wins. So I
Yeah.
didn't see anyone under Halo. And I think that would have been the only game, maybe StarCraft. Maybe there's like a coach in StarCraft
Yeah.
who might have me beat, but um, that's why I specified console, like
Gotcha.
console winningest, and I couldn't see anything in COD or Halo, so I'm taking that title.
Dude, sick, man. It's a pleasure to have you on, man. I'm happy we're able to make time, man. Um,
Yeah, me too.
so want to kind of start back like prior to the day, prior to today, like, growing up, kind of what did gaming look like in your household? Like, what was your kind of favorite games growing up? Like, what was kind of like the family dynamic around that? Like, just tell me a little bit about like, Ashes growing up.
Yeah, I was always a gamer, and I mean, I think that's pretty much everybody who works in esports and gaming. Like they grew up as gamers.
Yeah,
It started with me, playing Super Nintendo in our basement with my brothers, or
that was my first
um,
console.
yeah,
Yeah.
going into my parents' room. They had a an original like Game Boy. Um, so like before school, like right when I woke up, I could run in there and like hop on their bed and play Game Boy for like 30 minutes before I had to get ready for school. And this is like kindergarten era, playing Mario Golf on the Game Boy. Um, and then that turned into like a love for Pokemon and getting Nintendo 64, and just it always stayed with me. Gaming was always like just the thing that I had the most fun doing. I played every sport you could think of at some point,
Mm,
but it gaming was always what I came back to. Gaming was what, like, my friends and I bonded over,
yeah.
and we'd just go over to whoever had the newest console or newest game or whatever, and that's whose house we went to for that weekend. And
Yeah.
um, it turned into a thing where like I started getting competitive about it. I learned about game battles, and
Mm,
so that was when I think my parents started getting a little bit more. I don't want to say annoyed, but just a little bit more like unsure of gaming, because it turned into, from this like
yeah.
hobby that he really
Yeah.
loves to, okay, this is taking up way too much of his attention.
Yeah.
And um but they were supportive. I was really lucky to be in a house. My mom would like go with me to like old MLG events in like 2009, 2010, and um as long as I was doing well in school and I was a straight A student, so like it didn't really take away from like
Mm,
any efforts outside of that. I was still playing, Rex League sports, so um I kind of kept a healthy balance, which I'm thankful for that they made sure that I did. But
yeah.
yeah, I was lucky to be in this. My dad didn't get it until like he started seeing like this career take off and me winning,
Yeah.
and then he started to understand. But um, uh, and they were definitely supportive, and to this day, they're some of my biggest fans.
Dude, that's fantastic, man. That's awesome that you kind of like you got that healthy balance of like, like they still didn't fully understand, but they allowed you to kind of pursue this, like, as long as you had some like you met some things that made them happy, and
Yeah,
you were able, yeah. I mean, that's awesome.
I think it's
That's
important too.
yeah.
Like now that I'm at this point where like I can be an adult
Yeah.
about some things,
That's
most things. Um, I can definitely see the importance of like what they were trying to instill in me at the time. Like then I'm like, well, like my homework will get done eventually. Like
yeah.
let me go. Like I have a GB match. Like I have a game battles match. Like I can't be late, or my
Right.
team's getting on, or whatever the case may be, or why can't I stay up to 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Um, but now that like I'm at a different point in life, I can definitely see the value in that and making sure that there's a healthy balance. And I think that's something where not enough people have strong role models or parents or guardians who can kind of instill that value.
Yeah.
And it's actually really important. And I see a lot of young kids who want to be like the next pro, who are doing those crazy hours, and that becomes their sleep schedule, or and they're not doing well in school. And I mean, esports, as much as it is, your talent and your reaction time, and how much you love the game, you have to think in every esport. It's a lot of mental fortitude. It's a lot of being able to process like what's the next play.
Yeah.
Pretty much every game is a chess match, even if it's something like Gears of War. So, um,
Gears especially.
I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think, and I think you touched on a really good point. It's something that I think the industry is focusing more on, is like it's gaming smarter, not harder. Like I
Mhm.
like, because I mean, even in like a organization like 100 Thieves, like they actually have a like a health management specialist. You know what I mean? Where like they are coaching their esports players, like helping them eat right, like helping them train right. I mean, it's a whole. I mean, it's a legitimate sport, and so I mean, except you're just using your brain. And obvious,
Mm.
and one could argue that like you're taking like you need a lot more attention in that arena, because gamers historically have that bad rap for staying up till 2, 3, 4, 5 a.m. and that's okay every once in a while, but that is a rough schedule, man. Like
Yeah, I mean, I I even like experienced that a little bit in college where, I'm now like not home, so it's like, all right, well
Mhm.
screw the rules and I can do whatever I want because I'm in college. And I mean, I saw my grades decline because of it. I saw like my mental health, decline because of it and just
Yeah.
being depressed. I saw like my physical health decline because of it. And I think like it was kind of a vicious spiral that exploring that freedom got me in like a bad place, and it made me kind of reevaluate and value those lessons that they were teaching me early on um, a lot more because of
Yeah.
it. So I had to kind of rebalance life, and I think like that is something that if people aren't careful, it's something that a lot of people are going to go through, and it kind of sucks to see knowing that like I was there and like that was I hated that. Like
Yeah.
I hated waking up at 5 in the afternoon, and it just not seeing sunlight like kind of just causes this like natural depression, and it's like you're upset but you don't know why you're upset.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you think you're having fun gaming, but it's really just a distraction. So
Spot on.
I I'm glad to be on a healthier sleep schedule, and that's what I try to teach the people that I work with.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to a certain point though, like some people, I think we all have to go through a variation of that. You know what I mean? Like whether it looks the same, exact same or not. Like sometimes humans can be really hard headed, and like it, as long as you don't have to go through it multiple times, I
Yeah,
think you're on the right path. Like if you can like, don't just half ass it, really go hard and like figure that shit out for yourself. But I mean, I think it's
yeah,
a cool thing that you instill. It's like you can't really change that, but you just know that they got to go through that, and it kind of just sucks. But I think in your role, it's valuable that you did because you have the experience to be able to pass on to them to like kind of like help them through that, not like force them out of it. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, everyone learns in different ways,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that I've tried to do with my coaching too. I learned through experience, and I think that as much as my parents were teaching me a valuable lesson, it didn't
Hmm.
really click until I experienced the bad side of it and go
Yeah.
like, oh shit, I don't want to ever feel this way again. Um, so I think that, everyone learns differently. And I think that's something that schools don't do a good enough job at. So I always remembered like being in a public high school and like the English classes, right?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure anybody who's ever been in an English class ever knows popcorn reading or some version of that where like
Hmm.
you're reading the book, whatever book you're reading as a class. And like then there's that one kid who reads slower and they need like a different type of help
Yep.
in teaching. Um, and then you've got like visual learners and you've got, more auditorial learners. And I think for me, I recognize that is true for esports. And I think there's a lot of coaches or people who develop players who try to force like one way is the right way. And I think you have to cater what you do towards the people that you're working with and find that kind of right balance. So like
Yeah.
a great example is, I've seen players in the past where if you tell them something that is right, objectively it is right, it, they'll want to fight it unless it's their concept, it's their idea. Then they latch onto it as it being right
Hmm.
because it's their idea, and it's an ego thing, sure, but if you want to just them to the point, then I've learned like in those situations, I can just ask, like, what color do you think the sky is today? Instead of me saying the sky's blue today, I go like, weird. It's not green. What do you think? Like, what do you think the best word is to describe the color of the
Yeah.
sky? And they'll be like, yeah, it's blue. And then like, okay, now they've latched onto the idea.
Right.
So like that's a really like dumbed down example, but I think that's really important. So like all these lessons and stuff that I've learned, like I don't have to just be like, hey, look, like this is the right thing to do it because all these people say it. It's like, well, one, I have experience with it and I can tell you firsthand it sucks. If you want to try it, go for it, but it sucks. And then two, like I can talk them through like the alternatives and ask the questions that provoke them going, oh yeah, that would suck. Okay. I don't want to do that.
Well, I mean, I think in you like I like to me visual or like to me experiential learners are you could one could argue that we have to walk through some of the toughest journeys, but at the same time it makes people like us the most valuable where you have every aspect and you can meet people exactly where they're at. And if there's someone who does learn differently, they don't have to go through it. You can help them from not either going through that, kind of help make it their idea, or just say like, look, fam, go through that shit. Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
it's like a human instinct thing
yeah,
too. It's like the small child who touches the stove. Like you can tell them the stove is hot
yeah,
dozens of times, but until they touch it and burn themselves, that doesn't like
register.
that's what really like locks it in. Going like, oh shit, I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah. Fantastic, man. I mean, So like, what got you like, so you mentioned GBs. Like, what was the first? I guess what was the first game that you got into game battles with?
It was actually Gears of War. Halo was like my game for the longest time. I actually hated Gears, and
No
then
shit.
yeah, I hated it because it was different from it was so different from Halo, and the whole third person perspective, and on top of that, I wasn't a huge fan of like the dark like
Yeah.
horror feel of it, even though it wasn't like a scary game. Like that was the vibe of it,
Oh yeah.
and then it was the game that my friend wanted to play every time I went over to his house. He needed help like beating, different levels in the campaign or whatever in co-op. And, we did those and I didn't really start enjoying Gears multiplayer, excuse me, honestly, until um we found the glitch for the Gears of War 1 multiplayer where if you like ran and held the B button and then ran into somebody, it would like skip the chainsaw animation and just make them pop
Oh yeah.
instantly. So
Yeah.
we'd like
I
run
remember
out of
that.
spawn and just like run straight at the other team and do that. And I remember that's when I started having fun and was like, okay, I'm gonna go buy this game and do this more. And started getting like involved in the game more and more and then playing it, correctly. And I had some friends introduce me to the competitive side and game battles and all that fun stuff. So it was a slow process to get there, but Gears was like my first real competitive game, and I was all in through Gears of War 1 and Gears of War 2.
Yeah.
And then actually when Gears of War 3 came out, I played it for about a week. I was like, nope, this isn't for me. And I uh I quit and played Halo for a month. So I went to one event for it. Nope, this isn't for me, and started playing a bunch of like whatever free PC games I could find.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude. Yeah, I mean, so it kind of shocked me because like you had mentioned Halo in the beginning. I'm like, oh, surely like he was, surely Halo was the first game he competed in, because that's my bread and butter. I grew up master, very similar story to yours, like Game Boy. The only thing that differs from our stories is I didn't have the Nintendo 64. I just skipped to the GameCube.
Mm,
But Halo, like Chief, was the first game that like really, like for a lot of different reasons, it was just such a strong emotional attachment to it. That first
yeah.
campaign, and then same thing with Gears of War. Like I think those two campaigns are so special because like they did such a good job of just tying you in and emotionally attaching you to the characters. The development was just absolutely unbelievable. But did you when you started competing in Gears of War, like did you like kind of like go to a lot of events? Did you earn any championships? Was it how long kind of was that competitive career?
So I played like game battles probably starting in like 2008.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then I learned about like MLG and that side of
Yeah,
it. And finally went to my first event. It was Meadowlands 2009. My team was awful. It was a last minute team. I just wanted to go,
yeah, man.
and uh, we sucked. And then at that event, like I left that team and started trying out for other teams. And I actually joined VVV during that time, which were like the main like the biggest clan in Gears. Um, so I was part of VVV, which kind of gave me like a little bit more credibility to my name, and I was under like their forums as like Gears Pro, though I wasn't like
Yeah,
actually a pro player. In MLG rankings or anything. And I kept playing game battles. I went to another event in Columbus with a VVV roster, and that team was actually expected to do really well. And then I ended up getting like the same placement as I did from the first one, so I was like really dejected from that.
yeah,
And uh, then I went to the like in 2010, it was like that season's finals, and that was in Orlando. And I went with like a completely different roster that I kind of joined maybe like a month or two before, and ended up getting like the same placement again. And I was like, all right, like it's not meant to be. And then Gears got dropped from the competitive circuit,
yeah.
so I played game battles a ton and became like a GB All Star. One of those people who do anything for a green W on that website.
Oh yeah,
And then my grades started dropping, and my my mom told me that I couldn't take my Xbox back to college. So that's when I was
mm,
like, or so I actually sorry, I tried Halo. I went to the Washington DC like Halo event,
yeah,
or MLG event, and with like a semi pro Gears team, and we did like all right, but we weren't great. And then that's like after that semester, grades, and I started playing. I had a computer still for like schoolwork, and it wasn't a good one by any means. And I was like, all right, like let's see what games are free. And I started playing like random games that I got super competitive at. Like there was like a racing game called Trackmania that I was like one of the highest ranked players like in the United States. And then that's when I my roommate showed me League of Legends
Oh yeah.
and in 2010, and I fell in love with that game. And like that's like really when it started, was League of Legends in 2010. I mean, I was more into that than any game ever.
I hear that, man. Like you know, those games to me are such a they're such a weird barrier to entry. Like those games require so much. I've only heard stories specifically from Courage when he was just like League of Legends is so much fun, but like you have to there is so much to learn and you get trash talked the entire way up the ladder. Like
Mm.
the fan base and the players are not helpful. But you have to
No.
learn so much to get to that level, you know?
Yeah, you definitely go through like the depths of hell in that player base, because you know, it's so massive. So there's like so many people who play,
Yeah.
and you know, you're never playing the same people twice until you get to a really high rank. So it's like it's just, it gets super toxic and volatile. People, I mean, that's like the anonymity of the internet. You know,
Mhm.
people just
Oh yeah.
their true colors come out, or they get braver and say crazier things. But um, you know, I started playing, the game was a beta in 2009, so I started playing like its first year of release. And I had my roommate who was showing me, like teaching me kind of the ropes, and my other roommate was like learning it at the same time. So like I had a
Yeah.
good group to play with and learn the game with and grow. And that turned into me just being, you know, all of my competitive like hunger was going and getting applied to this new game. And this was the first game that was starting to take like massive steps into being an esport.
Yep. Yep.
And you know, as a college student who knew he wanted to work with video games, but it wasn't like happy with his degree path, because you know, like I was at the time, there wasn't really esports other than,
No.
you know, the MLG events and stuff. It wasn't like a career path. So I'm looking at video games and going, okay, I need to be in video game like programming design,
Mhm.
so I need to do computer science classes, which I'm doing really well at, but I need to do math classes, which I'm failing, so I can't keep going along that degree. Let's try the art side. Well, now I have to take drawing 101 with all these kids who draw like Mona Lisa for fun, and I'm over here making like stick figures. And I'm like, okay, well, this isn't it. Like, this sucks. So, um, that whole time, I just like, I'm trying to compete
Yeah.
and do my thing in the game. And it was definitely like a weird time. Like, I think a lot of people now are a lot and I'm jealous of the kids like now who can be
Sure.
like, yeah, like I want to be a pro player and here's how I get there.
Yep.
When I was doing it, it was like, I want to be a pro player. Shit.
Yeah. 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 Well, because there was no, I mean, because like even you look back to the days of like I personally started watching back in Halo 2 when you had Final Boss and you had like, you know, and
Yep.
Triggers Down and like that was like such an elite group of players that like, you know, it and they didn't even realize that that was going to work out. That was just a pure it was a pure passion. You know, and there was nothing there was hardly any monetary like gain. It was people probably spent way more than they actually earned. It probably went up in the negative. So I mean, it was probably I can only imagine that like because you're sitting here trying to figure this out and like because historically with our parents like college was like the only way to live like a comfortable life, you know, unless
Mhm.
you just got like kind of lucky and just had insane business sense and knew how to start a business out of nowhere, you know.
Yep.
um but I can only imagine how confusing that was. But it's you could argue in a sense that like it's almost going to make you like you can appreciate it a lot more like what we currently do have, you know, and to like
Oh,
move,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that has to be a deep level of appreciation now that you finally kind of like quote unquote made it out and like made it through that like
Yeah.
weird murky phase.
Yeah. No, it's so weird seeing like the difference between like now and then.
Hmm.
And you know, I remember being at those 2009 events and seeing, you know, like the Walshies walking around and like his face like on all the posters.
Yeah.
Or I was even joking about this the other day, like Fear itself, one of the Halo pros, who would like,
Hmm.
you would actually just see him like walking around with like the girl, like the stride girls like under his arms, or you know, like, and I was like, damn, like these are like, these guys have made it. Like
Right.
they're playing video games, that's probably their living, they get any girl they want, you know what I
Yep.
mean? Like they were like the rock stars of like esports. And before it was, you know, really esports. So but there's no like, you, how do you get there, right? Like you just
Right.
had to be crazy good at a game and get recognized. But I
How do
mean,
you even get
even,
recognized? You know what I mean?
yeah, like
Like
how do you, there wasn't Twitch, like you
yeah.
couldn't live stream
Yeah.
and pop off and get a host from somebody and, you know, start making a name for yourself. And even like YouTube like wasn't
Mm-mm.
really where it's at now. I mean, you were like you had to be kind of lucky or kind of wealthy to get a capture card even so
Yep.
you could like have proof for your game battles
Yep.
matches, let alone like do content creation and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean it was definitely like a weird time, whereas now it feels like everybody has a computer that could, can stream, and everybody has good internet. Like that was the other
Hmm.
thing too, like I didn't have good internet
Yep.
in my area. um so like, fiber is much more readily available now, and people with good internet and
Yeah.
having a computer that can stream and buying capture cards, like now you can just pull up to Walmart or Best Buy and get one for like 40-50 bucks. And
Yep.
yeah, it just seems like so much more readily available, and there's a lot more avenues, Twitter and social media and stuff. Like
Yep.
we had MySpace and Facebook, like
That's
like, and nobody on Facebook gave a fuck if you played video
no.
games. Like if anything, you were just a dork. So
That's right.
it was like it was such a weird time compared to now, where like it's a lot more mainstream and there's a lot more avenues to
Yep.
make that name for yourself.
Well, yeah, and the secret, because I wondered when I first started my journey to like to kind of pursue my dream. It's just like, well, how do I start doing it? It's like, well, just make content. Like, I mean, that's
Yeah.
like it starts out that simple, and it seems like there's obviously a lot more to that. Like, how do I do that? But it just that's the avenue. Like, that you want to get good, show it. Like it's a big world out there, man. Like,
Yeah, it's kind of like what you have to do now. I
yeah,
mean, in the words of my former boss, Hex,
yeah,
content is king.
yeah,
So, like that's honestly the easiest way to do it, is just like making content and putting yourself out there in more ways of than just like, hoping you get recognized for playing well in a
right.
random game.
Right, exactly, man. You could argue that he invented the gaming scene on YouTube. Like him and the crew. Like that was just they were doing that. So they were so far ahead of their time when they did that. No
Yeah,
one else was
they
doing it.
uh they definitely. I mean, Hex and what he did with Optic, and then like
Mm,
what FaZe Clan has done, they changed what esports is
yeah.
in a lot of ways. And now you have like, Hex's like protege Nade Shot doing it with 100 Thieves.
Yep.
And um I think like this era of esports is a little bit less focused on the competitive side, and more about building the stories around the players who are competing, or the influencers and content creators,
Yep.
because I think that's what draws more fans than the actual games. I mean, imagine that you got to watch your favorite football team practice. There was a live stream that they were doing, or you
Yeah.
got to see it from the perspective, of Tom Brady, or
Yep.
whatever the case may be. So, um, I think that's what's setting us apart from regular sports, and I think a lot of brands are capitalizing on that, because they're recognizing that that's the trend, and that's the like one of the roads to success.
Well, it arguably is the most. It's probably the most like the clearest path, if you will.
Mhm.
I mean, speaking of that, like speaking of storylines, like that's actually how I found out who you were, was through the Optic Vision series. You know what I mean? Like I like that was where like I'm like, oh shit, dude. Like and I saw, then I connected the dots with UYU and some of that. It's people are more invested in the story versus anything. Like I'll tell you, like I've never watched a 100 Thieves esports match, but I really love what Nate Shot does, and I really like their apparel, and I really like to buy it.
Yeah.
It's just a fascinating thing. So I mean, kind of tell me like what was the transition from like going from your competitive side like to the coaching? Like how did you even get involved in that?
Yeah, so part of League of Legends, for people who don't play it, unlike a lot of other games, it's heavily based around their in-game rank system, and
Mhm.
that's kind of like your the start of your path to pro. You can play competitive as much as you want, but if you can't climb the ranked ladders in the game, then you don't give the time of day from anybody who matters.
Yeah.
So, um, I was struggling to climb those rank systems, because my internet, realistically, my internet at home was horrendous. So it was just a massive struggle for me to play at my best and actually climb the rank system, um, along with having like other responsibilities and chores and jobs and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yep.
But realistically, like that, I think that was one of my main bottlenecks. And uh, I still had a competitive drive, and I still, like any team that I was on, I was the team captain. So I'm, scheduling our practices or entering us in whatever
Got it.
tournaments I could
Yeah.
find of our skill level and stuff like that. And even when I was competing, like, their rank system is like bronze, or it was bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, uh, and then challenger was introduced. And I like was gold on a team with like all diamond players, and the reason they were willing to play with me was because I played like a high level player, and I had the thought process and
Yep.
the in game leading as a high level player.
And just map awareness
Um,
probably too, you know?
yeah, so like I was already drawing players who were way better than me, like really had no business teaming with me. But like attracting them to play and want to play with me. And we like even had success. Like I won like a $5,000 like Game Battles Dr. Pepper Pro
I
tournament
know
or something like that. So like I saw the taste of success, but I I like realized that that was going to be shut down, and there was no way around it. So what I started doing is going, okay, like why don't I let someone who's way better than me fill my role to make the team that much better, and I'll just keep doing these like managerial duties of scheduling the practices
Yep.
and finding people for us to scrim against and entering us in tournaments and handling the registrations and talking to orgs and all that stuff. So that kind of got me introduced on the management side, but I was still like competitive hungry and I still understood the game. So I would sit in on the practices, or
Mm,
I would watch, somebody would stream it to me privately, or when they brought in the spectator into the game, I would
yeah.
spectate the games live and then give them my feedback. Be like, "Oh yeah, like that was good. You did this. What about doing this? Like could you have done this? Maybe you should have done this instead." Um and I that was kind of my first taste in coaching, and then
Mm,
working with other coaches, like people who were dedicated to coaching in the game. Um, that like kind of opened my eyes to what that role really meant. So then when in 2015, I had tried to kind of come back into gears as a manager for an org that I was working for under League of Legends. I tried to get him a gears team, and it kind of like fizzled out. Um, so later when I made another attempt, it was honestly me just sending a DM to Mental,
I know shit.
and it was in September. It was like September 15th of 2015, or sometime early September. And I literally just said, "Hey, like I'm a esports manager and coach. I work in League of Legends. I have contacts to all these different orgs. Let me come help you guys out. I'm sure orgs are talking to you guys. And I want to help you not get taken advantage of, because I knew they were like young guys. I
Yep.
knew they
Oh
were
yeah.
really talented from watching them. I knew that nobody believed in them to be really good because like they hadn't been to a LAN event as a team together,
Sure,
and
sure, sure.
they were just kind of known as like the young online warrior kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, like I saw a potential there. Like I saw them being able to be more than that, and so I was like, let me come help make sure that you guys, like, if nothing else, let me help make sure you guys don't get taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And he talked to the rest, and they're like, all right, like it doesn't hurt anything. So I kind of got added into all their group chats and introduced to them. And then I asked if I could watch their scrims, and they started letting me watch scrims, which like was super like taboo. Like
Yeah.
nobody wanted
Yeah.
me in the scrim lobbies. Like everyone was afraid I was going to be cheating with being like spectating scrims and stuff like that. And there was a lot of teams that like wouldn't scrim them if
Because of
I
it.
was in the lobby.
Yeah.
And but when I was watching them, like at first I was kind of like quiet and just kind of let them do their thing, and then I would notice like bad tendencies or good tendencies, and I would start pointing those out. Like, you do this really well, but we're doing this not so well. What if we change it up? What if we try this? What if we throw a smoke grenade from here? Just random little things. And they started like realizing and recognizing that like there was things, like I wasn't dumb about the game. Like
Right.
I
Right. Right. Right.
knew and I
Right.
understood the flow of the game and how it should be played. And so they started listening to me more, and it kind of like earned their respect. I wasn't trying to force anything down their throat. It was just,
Yep.
like, here are some ideas, maybe try them. And when they tried them and worked, like the respect was earned. And
Yeah.
that grew into me being more and more involved as a coach. And then it became a thing like, if I couldn't be in the lobby, like if another team was resisting, then screw it. We won't scrim you. We'll get somebody else to scrim us. And um, like they just kind of they trusted me from there, and they gave me that opportunity. So we had like a really strong mutual belief in each other,
Yeah.
and I was able to hone my coaching skills and take everything that I'd learned from all the people that I worked with in League of Legends and apply it to a game that coaches were just stopwatch holders.
Yeah.
And it kind of changed the face of coaching in gears, and I think in console esports.
I love that you brought that up, man. Because like because even to tell you the truth, up until recent, like a year or two ago, like like in Halo, it's like what are coaches besides exactly stopwatch holders? You had the timers on your phone, and like in it
Mhm.
and it begged to answer the quite like at like had the question like, what is really the involvement? Like, how much should they get? Like, what is is it really valuable to have them? But I think like that's such a cool, honestly, it's a cool perspective, man, because it's you understood the game, you understood
Yeah.
who they were, and you didn't try to like impress upon them like what they should do because they're the players and you're the coach. But I think that's just such a valuable thing that not a lot of people do. It's like if they're the coach, then it's their rules or it's the highway, and it's like that doesn't work, man. Like you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I think I think for different games or different sports, it works differently. It's like
Yeah,
different. It's like cultural differences. For League of Legends, it's much more like this is your staff, and the staff dictates how the game is going to be played and how the players are going to interact with each other.
kind of like the
Um,
NFL.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
much more structured like traditional sports. Where I think in a lot of console sports, up until recently, maybe with COD, um, it was the opposite. The players dictated the pace. The player assigned to an org. The org didn't invest in the support staff because it's a console. Like that just wasn't what you did with
right,
console teams.
right.
Um, but I think now, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that have helped legitimize it. I think, there was coaches in COD, but early on, and then they started getting taken away because like they couldn't be on stage with the teams because like there was so many issues where coaches were just screaming across the stage at the other team and trash
Yeah,
talking and
yeah,
not coaching, right?
right.
And up until like even up till this day, like coaches aren't on stage with COD teams in the comms. They can visit between maps. Um,
That's interesting.
and then for Halo, coaches were on stage, but like we said, it was you overshields up in 30, that kind of
Yeah,
thing. So like
which is
it wasn't like
valuable, but it's
yeah,
like yeah,
it's like another person who can call out and focus purely on comms, but at the same time, it's not what coaching is when you think of the definition of coaching. Um, and then in Gears, same thing. It was a buddy of the team who wanted to go to the event and would help chip in for the hotel room,
yeah,
or it was somebody who could hold a stopwatch.
yeah.
And I think, especially for Gears, like when I came along and was like, no, like this is how a coach should be, and like set the team on, like there was a lot of things that were really like basic and rudimentary about Gears. Like when you got on for scrims, it was like, all right, what time can everybody be on? Oh, 9:30 tonight? Okay, cool. We'll all get on 9:30 and I'll tweet out that we need to scrim when everyone gets on. And it's like, I was like, why are we doing this when in league I would know who we're scrimming for the next 2 weeks, like
Yeah,
in
yeah,
advance, and this is amateur level players. Um, so things like that, like helped start like the first like scrim chats and started scheduling scrims like days in advance, which like that was like pulling teeth because
yeah, bro.
getting people organized to that level for gaming and Gears. And um before like the esports started to like take off again, giving feedback, taking notes, recording vods, like all of those things were things that weren't being done and kind of got legitimized. And then when other like we started like our run of like, hey, we're winning everything,
Mm,
and going to events, uh like that was when people go like, okay, shit, they're doing something different and we need to start like figuring it out. And I saw a lot of other coaches kind of like start actually coaching. um so that was good to see. And I think the same thing, I don't know if there was a ripple effect into like other games. I know like when we were with Optic, the Optic Halo team with like Lethal and Snakebite and them, like their coach Royal was really like he was good. Like I had a lot of
yeah. Oh
conversations
yeah.
with him. So I don't know how much he was doing. Like I imagine he was doing it. Like I don't think I had an influence on what he did. So I think there were coaches in Halo who were already doing those kind of things too, but it was around that same era. And I think a lot of it comes from seeing um what other games are doing, like what League of Legends coaches, what Counter-Strike coaches, Dota
Yeah,
coaches, all
yeah.
these other support staffs are doing. Why aren't we doing it in our games? And then it just kind of like all started at the same time. So
That's wild, man. I mean, and I think you kind of just, one question I have for you is like, if so, like, you mentioned like this is not what coaching is. This was not like this is not what you're supposed to be doing. Like, if you could kind of define like in your own words, like what is coaching to you? Like, what is the right way to coach from your own experience?
to me, a coach is somebody who's there to make you be better at whatever it is you do.
Mm,
So um what I bring to my team is a little bit of uh I mean, like we're kind of we treat our team like a family atmosphere more than like a business.
Yeah.
which I think gives us an edge trusting each other in game. Um, Recent results, you know, aside. Um, um, but I think like in our history, that's always kind of what's given us an advantage. On top of that, I'm there to be help provide structure. I'm there to help provide feedback, both in real time during our practices and like post through notes or when we watch VODs together, things like that, and give a different perspective. Give a perspective that's not emotionally attached to a specific
Mm,
play or thing that happened in the game because I'm not. I'm just seeing it from the perspective of I see everybody on the map and I see what you did and you fucked up.
right.
You know what I mean? So let's revisit this. And you could have like an emotional attachment to like, oh, this was the only thing I could have done. I was so hurt. I had to do this. I had to like, well, then let's take a step backwards. Why were you so hurt? Let's take a step backwards. Why did you put yourself in this position to begin with? Like, I can help provide that perspective and not feel like I need to defend an answer.
Yeah.
And I think coaches need to understand that they're just as we're always teaching, we're always learning, right? Like, I don't ever pretend to know every single aspect of the game or how it should be played perfectly every single time. I think that's a collaborative effort. I think the
Yeah.
players have a understanding of the game that I'll never truly be able to get because I'm not in there playing it every single day for hours. But at the same time, I have a perspective like we talked about that they don't get.
Right.
So I think that balance of like I can learn from them and learn, maybe they notice something playing the game at some point and they want to teach it to the team. Like, good, that's information that I can take in. And the next time we have a situation, or maybe I can look how to apply that to a different map or whatever the case may be. So I think like it's a lot of give and take. It's a lot of both sides, both parties teaching and developing each other. And that's why you continue to grow as a coach and as a team.
Fantastic, man. No, I like that because it's to me a lot of it seems to be more off stream, like off like
Mhm.
outside of gameplay, and I think that's a huge component, man. And I think regardless of what what coach like whatever you are coaching, like that availability needs to always be there. So I mean, that's fantastic, man. Got to ask like what was the journey like? How did you guys get picked up by Optic? Like what was that like? That just seems like a magical door that someone just doesn't walk through. Like they don't just find that randomly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing about Optic is I was a massive Optic fanboy. Um, I watched. Yeah, I'd been supporting Optic since God knows when. And was a big fan. Watched like I didn't watch COD a ton, but I watched when Optic was playing every single time. I watched their YouTube content. I watched Hex's vlogs daily. Like it was part of my routine. Like sit down for lunch, pull up Hex's vlog for the day, watch it while I'm eating,
Yeah.
laugh. Feel like I'm part of the family or whatever, even
Yeah.
if I'm just some weird fan. And yeah, I mean, I used to tell League of Legends teams like even like 2013, 2014, like how cool it'd be if we could get Optic in League of Legends. Like I think this is the team. Like
Yeah.
this roster, like us, like the six of us, like we should go under Optic. I can't figure out a way to contact Optic. Like at that time, like I knew a surprising amount of teams and orgs and players and stuff, and I could never figure out how to get in touch with Optic.
Mm,
And it was I think like that exclusivity and elusivity of like it's just this small group and I don't know how to get into. I can't even say like, hey, love your stuff other than like a YouTube comment.
right.
I can't shoot them a cold
I
call
do.
kind of email and be
Yep.
like, hey, I have a cool League of Legends team, which hardly ever works. But
Yeah.
um yeah, I it was just like a long time dream. And then we were playing we had been part of Denial for a while, and our contracts were coming to an end. And we had heard rumors of Optic being interested in Gears. And we were like, okay, well, we win everything. So in theory, we should be the favorites.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if anyone was going to get picked up, it should be us. And we had heard like other teams signing for salaries and stuff like that. So um, we told Denial that we didn't want to re-sign, even though they were offering us a salary, which like at the time was kind of mind blowing.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
And
dude.
Denial had all of its issues, anyways.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Um, so we gave that kind of like notice that we didn't want to sign, and then um, I don't remember. I don't remember if it was I got an email or like a Skype message. I think it was a Skype message. I think I got added on Skype by Jay, and he like introduced himself, and I was like fucking course I know who you are. And he was like, Hex and I want to have a call with you and talk about the Gears of War team. And I was like, okay, like, yeah. And I don't think Hex was on the first calls, but we had a call and he just basically said, yeah, like we're interested. We want to sign you guys. Like, here's what we would offer. Here's what, you would do. Um, and on actually the best and worst part, like, because I remember that first call happened, like they were interested and they asked what we were looking for and what they told us, like what they were like willing to offer. And like obviously from a business thing, I'm like, yeah, we're super interested. Like, let us talk about it and like I'll get back to you tomorrow.
Mhm.
And um I remember going out to my parents and like just like crying as like a young adult and just being like, I we're in, like
Yeah.
we should be good to go with Optic, like that's, and like we'll get paid a salary and everything. And obviously the team was all on board. And then I had the follow-up call and he said, okay, so like this is all great, and just like uh, so there's no like miscommunication or anything. We're only interested in signing the 4 players. We don't really need any managers. And
Mm.
I was like, okay, well, like my heart sank, right?
Oh
And I
yeah.
was like,
Oh yeah.
well, so I'm not just a manager, I'm their coach. And he was like, okay, that's different. Can you send me some like examples of like the stuff that you do for them? And so I did. I sent him like our practice schedules, and I sent him like notes and stuff that I've done. And like I don't know if he like talk to the players too, but I remember like maybe like a couple days later he was like, all right, well, it seems like you're a valuable asset to the team, so we'll be signing you as well. And you'll be under the same contract as them and salary and everything. And I was like, like that was when it was like real, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then we had our call, we got our contracts and had them like read over and everything and signed. And then we had our call with Hex. And I'll never forget, like, during that call, one, I was like shaking with excitement because, again, like watching Hex's vlogs was like part of my daily routine, right?
Yeah.
And so we were going over like the announcement, and he was talking to us like stuff that they wanted to do and like timing wise, and it was going to be in Vision.
Yeah, dude.
And
What an experience.
um yeah, and I was like just like in disbelief and like trying to, like, my team was very quiet. I mean, they were young kids, so I'm trying to like be like the calm voice of like like I'm the leader of the team.
Right.
And
But you're just much of a fanboy.
but yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm just trying not to freak out. And and there was a point and he was like, and I want you guys to understand that just because you joined Optic, don't mistake that as you've made it. Like, this is the start of when I want to see you bust your ass to prove it. And like this is where the real work starts. And I remember that resonating with me because I had already like started a content creation, like daily uploads and streaming and all of that grind
Mhm,
in
mhm.
hopes of joining Optic. And I'm like, yeah, no, I've made it. Like, and I remember like starting to kind of have those thoughts and then hearing him say that. And I was like, yeah, I got to prove that I belong here. Like, I already kind of
Right.
had to prove, like, because it wasn't in their plan to sign me. I got to prove that like they didn't make a mistake and that I belong here.
Right.
And um, yeah, I mean, it was kind of history from there. We got our vision announcement, and
That was
I
sick,
remember
dude.
freaking out. And yeah,
Well, I mean, he even like one thing that stuck out to me from Hex's or from Vision itself was like when even with Hitch, like, Hitch was brought on, but he's just like, make no mistake, like you're just the fucking camera dude. You know what I mean? Like
mhm,
you're like, just because you're here, like it doesn't mean you are a part of the family. Like you earned your keep. Like
yeah.
once you give it, like it sounds like he gives you the shot, and if you don't make it on the shot, like then it's like, okay, later. You know?
Yeah, Optic was the elusiveness of getting in touch with them to begin with.
Sure, sure.
Um, you're part of the family when at those during those times, right? Like the real Optic times.
Yeah.
You were part of the family when you got brought in, but you I'm trying to think of a way to describe it that's not ever going to be taken as insulting. It was almost like picture joining a frat. Like, just because you join doesn't mean you're
Right.
in that like circle, right? Like, you still
Right.
got to prove that you belong and that you're all about it.
Yeah.
Um, and like you can earn your keep, right? Which I'm not saying like Optic was a frat, but
No, I get
uh
it, dude. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know what I mean? So
yeah.
it's like just because we were there and we were wearing the same branding wasn't it didn't mean that we were initially part of that inner circle. We had to like prove that we were going to do a good
Sure.
job
Sure.
because Optic was so close knit and so tight. It was I think a larger risk than we see now in esports when another team was brought under that banner to wear that brand and represent Optic.
Yeah.
You had to understand Optic's values and you had to understand Optic's culture and its roots and prove that those were the same kind of values that you had. So I think that was like, you know, getting signing us as a team, like as a business move, made sense. It made
Oh
Optic. I
yeah.
mean, it
Oh yeah.
further sealed Optic as like the brand that dominated like console because you have
Bro,
the
yeah.
winning COD team and you have the winning Halo team. Like there was a month where we won back
I
weekends, right?
remember that. Yeah.
For like Gears Halo or Halo Gears COD,
Yeah.
and like that's never going to be done again, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just done with. It's never going to be that kind of accomplishment is never going to be achieved again, it at least anytime in the near future. So um we had to like make sure that like when we showed up we represented what Optic was about and that we understood and that other part of it was like uh not letting it get to our heads, right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh
I
yeah.
think
I can only
that
imagine.
might be a mistake that people make is like they join a brand like their dream org and then that kind of like I've made it mentality and then they don't work as hard. And we were
Right.
like, no, like we're gonna win everything.
Yeah.
Like that we're not here to win one trophy and make Hex proud. Like we're here to like have him like getting a box every day of like, oh, here's another Gears trophy, here's another Gears trophy. Like
Yeah.
that was our goal. Um and I think we did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, man, y'all like any like during that Vision series, it was just WWW. I mean, there was hardly any losses, man. That and I think they did such a that's what's cool about Optics. Like they literally made sure that that was made very clear up front. Like it's like, bro, like cool, you joined, you made it, you hustled your ass off to get here. But it's like, you know, I think it's the same thing with the company. Like you don't just like when you get your offer letter, it's like cool, now prove it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you don't really get accepted by the team until you do something good for the team. Like, and it's just kind of how it is, man.
Yeah.
Um, that's awesome, dude. So kind of walk me through like, you had the opt days. I imagine those are probably like just glory days. You know what I mean? Like that just seems like the absolute the
Yeah.
dream the dream job, man. Like what was kind of like the transition when you went from did you go straight from Optic to UYU or like kind of like what did that look like kind of post Optic like when you kind of sunsetted that?
No, so obviously like we had the a taste of the Optic glory days.
Yeah.
And then we moved out here to Texas with Optic and got to watch that whole catastrophe.
Yeah. Oh, dude,
Um
that was wild.
yeah, it was a weird time too because I was like moving up in the company, which was my dream. Like I got like hired to do more than just coach the Gears team. I was coaching the Gears team and working as a player manager. Basically
That's
like a
awesome.
like helping all the different teams, and then that got me moved up to being an assistant GM. With basically because like I had an understanding of how Optic like was
And
and
functioned. Yeah.
trying to reinstill that in a more corporate atmosphere, which was a failing effort because there was way too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yep.
Um, but we got to watch that, and then when we saw like there was all the rumors of it selling, and we were already kind of getting like there was just a lot of like bad things happening to us as a team. Um, from like an internal behind the closed doors aspect that we weren't happy about. So we wanted to leave, and which like it was crazy to like process like wow, like we really want to leave Optic.
That's
But
wild.
it was in such a it was in such a position where it was like it made sense, right? Like nobody really wanted to be there anymore
Yeah.
because it wasn't Optic anymore. Like it was just like it wasn't Optic. And so we let them know and they told us no, because there was like the sale going on and they couldn't like make any changes during
Yeah.
that because
Oh,
it
sure.
changes all like the paperwork and everything, which made sense. So once it was finalized, we actually like I had a call with Ari who owns Immortals or is the CEO of Immortals, And I was like, he was like, yeah, I hear like you guys want to leave. And I was like, yeah, like Optic's not Optic, and we don't like this isn't what we signed up for.
Sure.
Um, and like no offense to you, but it's just, you know.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I get it. Like, yeah, we'll sign your releases and we'll let you guys go and explore options. So um that put us like out on the market, and we were the most dominant team in Gears history. So I felt like we were in a good position to find ourselves a new home. Um, we had E League coming up for like the launch of Gears of War 5, or Gears 5, but we didn't have like a set like idea of what the esport was going to look like.
Yeah.
We just knew it was supposed to be bigger and better. So we went to E League as because we were fielding. I mean, like I remember we were in Atlanta, like at a restaurant, and I'm texting like, Luminosity and like all these different orgs, like fielding different offers and negotiating. And
Hmm.
um, we went to E League as talks,
I
to
re-
like
yep.
to tie in with the Halo guys who had gotten dropped. So that was like a super cool experience. Like that was a lot of fun. I remember I texted Snakebite and I was like, "Yo, I got this really cool idea. I don't know if you're down for it, but like we don't have an org. Would you mind if we went as talks?" I was like, "I don't need anything. We don't need anything. We can just like rock the name and the logo and go, and you don't have to pay us anything or do whatever. Just we'll go do our thing." And he was like, "No, like let's do this. Like let's send you guys jerseys and shirts and stuff to wear." And
That's
so
fantastic.
like that was really cool to like tie back to like what was real Optic,
Oh
the
yeah.
Halo team, and be with them again. And that was just for one event. It was just to have a team name for that event. And then we won that, and then we were kind of back on the market again officially. Um, and NRG ended up making us. I mean, we talked to everybody. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I either had a call or an email thread with like, if you could think of an org name,
You
they're
were.
probably on that list.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had a lot of people who said they were interested. We had a lot of people make offers, and then it came down to NRG made like the most compelling offer for us. And at the time, we had no idea that Hex was joining or anything about COD, which ended up making it really cool because it felt like, Optic was reuniting just under a different brand. So we
Sure.
were super excited about that. And unfortunately, we had like a rocky start to Gears 5 and didn't meet their expectations, and we were released. But um, yeah, that helped us find a new home in UYU.
It's badass, man. Yeah, I mean they did pretty good about keeping that whole thing under wraps until it was official. And I mean, you're kind of looking at the same thing with all the drama that's going on with like Hex buying the Optic brand, and like like that's a whole other storyline.
Yeah.
The COD scene never ceases to amaze me with the storylines that they produce. Like to me, that's like why even in the roughest times of COD, like that game has survived and has done not only survived but done well even in some of the roughest like games that they've even had.
Yeah. COD, I mean, like, that's it's kind of weird because I feel like a lot of other esports have tried to copy what like COD and then brands like Optic and FaZe and Envy have done.
Yeah.
Where you look at Overwatch or League of Legends when they franchise, like they require the teams to have those mini docu series around their teams.
Yeah.
Uh, but like that I'm pretty sure that kind of comes from the roots of COD was doing it first. Like Vision was there first. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Um, so I think there's like a lot of things that COD are kind of trendsetters on, and being able to tell stories because of the people who have been involved, like Hex. Um, it's it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they were pioneers in the space, and that was they were doing it before it was cool because that was their vision. I mean that was their idea, and like it kind of just goes to show like there is a time and a place to have that bullish mentality. You know what I mean? That
Yeah,
where it's just like this is how it's gonna be, and this is what we're gonna get, and we're gonna literally sacrifice everything to make it.
yeah.
Um, that's awesome, man. Like I gotta ask, like as a coach, like probably what was one of the toughest times like in your coaching career? Like like what was probably I guess like one of the lowest spots, or like something that like was one of your major challenges.
Um, I think there's been kind of two. I mean, since I've come into Gears with
Mhm.
this team, we've made only a handful of roster changes. Our original roster, we made a change because one of the players quit. Um, they like just no showed an event.
Oh wow.
And that was when I had to like sub in, and we still got second somehow.
I remember hearing that
Um,
on the cast. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and then after that roster, we added a player. Actually, well, that was like the end of Gears of War UE and started Gears of War 4, so it became 5v5. So like that was our first roster change. And then I think 2 events later, we had to make another one, which was kind of tough. Like I remember that one was like I was like landing. I had like a to transfer flights on my way home from an event that we lost. And I opened up my phone like as I'm walking through the airport, and I see the text chat of like one of the players giving one of the other players an ultimatum of like, you got to do this or you're out of the team.
Wow.
And I'm like, ah, shit. And I have to just turn my phone back off and get on my next flight. Like, I don't want to deal with this right now in the middle of North Carolina, like Charlotte Airport.
Yeah.
Um, so like that was tough, but like it was kind of expected. Um, and after that roster change, like we had to make another change. Like, and we moved to Texas, and we're all here, and we had to make a roster change. That one was really tough because everyone at that point, like we're all living in the same apartment complex, so it
Yeah.
felt, these guys were family before, but now it's like they're like actually like I'm seeing them every day. Um, that one was really tough. And it was for such a dumb reason, that I've talked about dozens of times. So I'm not like going to get into it again,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
so dumb, and that one was really tough. And it ended up working out because we ended up building a really strong roster after that. Um, but we went on another tear of winning like 7 or 8 events in a row. But I think the hardest point has been this last year. I mean, COVID and everything obviously makes
Sure.
everything like a lot worse. The last live event, so our first event of Gears 5 that wasn't E League because they're not counting that one for some reason. The
Yeah.
first like big open event of Gears 5 was San Diego, and we got the worst placement of our careers. We got top 8, and it sucked. And it was a single elimination bracket, which like is part of it, and it was partly our egos because like we were destroying everyone online, so we went in there kind of like lazy,
Yep.
thinking just everyone sucked. And there was like changes to the game the Friday of the event, so like that caught us off, which was dumb, but we should have been able to adapt. So I was super upset about that, right? But we didn't make a change because we believed that we could still like, well, we looked at
Yeah.
it as like, okay, this was a fluke. Like let's just come back. We went undefeated in the pro league and then lost this event. That doesn't make sense. Let's come back and step our shit up. And then we went to Mexico. It was like right around when COVID was starting to hit. So I was already paranoid about that. And I'm already paranoid about Mexico because I get sick very easily with stomach bugs.
Oh wow.
And so every time I go to Mexico, like I'm one of those ones who's like brushing his teeth with like bottled water.
You got to, bro.
Um,
You got to.
so uh, we got 8th place again, right? We got top 8 again. And it was so weird because we were destroying the team that we lost to. Like we were beating them so bad that like in the middle of rounds, like we're looking up at the main stage to see how that match is going because like they're just not even fighting back.
Yeah.
Um, and we ended up losing that event. And that was like after that event, you could tell like that team was done, that roster is done. So it was like a period of like confusion of like what's going to be the change that we have to make. Do we have to drop one player? Do we have to drop 2 players? Um, who would we even get?
Right. Right.
Because like they're still really good, but it's not working in this game. And I think that was kind of one of my lowest points, uh, because it's just a lot at once. It's, we got dropped by NRG, we signed to UYU, and then immediately lose the next event. And so it's like now I'm worried if we're going to get dropped again.
Sure.
Um, I have to figure out who we're going to replace. Um, I mean, we're talking about it like this is the like first time ever that we're like literally in the hotel room talking about like what are we going to do? Like,
Yeah.
this player played really bad. This player played really bad. Um, and then who could be our potential options? Like, does somebody need to go out and start like chatting with some of the other teams that have been eliminated already and start
Yeah.
flirting a little bit, or um, it just like that. It was so like the plane ride home, like a loss like that when you're expected to win is crushing. A loss like that when people are hoping that you lose, which is kind of the case for us always because we win so much.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
that that's always tough. And then you know being paranoid about COVID and just not knowing what the future is going to hold and worried that your org's going to drop you because you lost, just like the last one seemed to have done. And it just like was it was just like a really difficult spot to be in. And
Yeah.
I think that was like one of the toughest points. And honestly, because of that, we did make tough decisions. We got two of the best players in the game from the team that had just won the event that we lost and the one before it. So I think that like getting them to buy into what we were about and what we wanted to do, even though
Yeah.
they were already on the back-to-back championship roster, like that kind of helped snap us out of it. And I was excited to have them on board in the new puzzle and just get back to it.
Yeah.
So, but as a coach, that was really tough.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you hit on a lot of crazy points, and I think a lot of people don't understand is like, who maybe not who or maybe not involved in esports or gaming or anything like that. Like that's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of pressure happening all at once because this scene is so like it's you got to perform. Like this is all a performance based. Like you can't just kind of like kick it, and expect to
Yeah.
like, there's days at like my job where like I can take it a little easier than some days and not have to worry about that. Like that's
Mhm.
completely not the case in esports. You can't like when you have a shit day, like that's I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure from that. Like who gets dropped? Is anyone gets dropped? How much do we trust each other? Are the people upstairs thinking like fuck them? Like
Yeah.
that's a an experience I think most people don't have to understand or don't really understand when it comes to this. Like it's like, oh yeah, they're playing a video game, they get to do what they want. It's like, but if that's your career, like you're all in. Like
Yeah.
if you get dropped, there's no more paycheck coming. Like
Not only that, but Gears is one of the smaller esports,
it
so like
is.
you don't. It's not like something like call or sorry, like football or something like that, where you're signing like a multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal, and
Yes.
if you
Yes.
get
Yes. Yes.
dropped,
Yes.
you still got enough money to live. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we I don't want to say we live paycheck to paycheck, but like we pretty much, especially now with the scene kind of dying down some, we live paycheck to paycheck. So it's like if you get dropped, that's there's not a whole lot of like savings, even with winning a bunch. Like there's not a whole lot of savings that you can fall back on. So um it's a tough, that's like kind of lingering on your mind. And we hadn't experienced that at all before. Like
Right.
Optic, we were Optic until the day we decided not to be Optic.
Yeah.
The NRG thing like shook us, I think, because everything was going great, and then we lost and things weren't going great. And I think there was other reasons involved in that decision, but like from a business standpoint, but like you know what I mean, like it just kind of like the timing, like it affects you. So now like every time you get a loss, it's like, oh shit, like does this mean my job's on the line? And not only that, but in esports, you've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of young, hungry players gunning for your spot. So if you're a player, there's always that next one up who wants what you have and will work twice as hard of you as you if you slip up,
Yep.
to take that. So it's definitely a lot of pressure. And then being the team that wins, then there's that added layer of, people
Expect.
hate watching us win.
Yeah, man. Because I'll even admit, like, everyone likes the underdog story too.
Mhm.
Like it's cool to see the winning team, but it's also cool to see like dynasties kind of like someone overtake them every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like you look at even the Halo, like what happened with Halo. Like you had the former Tox roster. I was getting so like I respected the players, man. Like they're like you couldn't have a better squad than that, but it was just like who's gonna come along and beat them? You know what I mean? Like who's gonna finally give them, and who's going to finally give him some competition? And I just think that yeah, that's a pressure I
Like
think,
watching that splice roster show up and start like taking wins. Yeah, no, like
bro.
I get it. Like
Yeah,
as a fan, I completely get it.
yeah,
I hated watching the Patriots win or hearing about how great Tom Brady. I don't even care about football, but I still hated seeing that on my timeline.
yep,
So like I completely get it. The part, I guess, being on this side of it, it's funny because it's like we're painted as the villains.
yeah,
Like if you looked at it like, Gears Esports as like the WWE or something like that, like we're the heels, like we're the villains,
yep,
but we're the nicest, quietest villains. That like we're not going crazy on Twitter and saying like we lost, but this team sucks ass and we shouldn't
right.
have lost. We're like, all right, GG's, you all played well. Like, we're not disrespectful, but like we're still painted as the villains by the casters and the people in charge. So it's like because all the stories is
It's
like
again, it's about the story.
setting up the underdog. So
Yep,
it's like
Yep.
Damn, at this point, maybe I should just start talking crazy on Twitter and being the villain. Like, fuck it.
Be careful, man. I know Seth and Crimsix got fined quite a bit, but that's CDL, but like they get fined for things like that now. It's fucking
Yeah.
crazy, dude. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Different
nuts.
times.
Yeah, a lot of different times, man. So kind of like wrapping things up here, man. You kind of like mentioned, like it's something that I've been in question myself. Like Gears 5 had a very rough start. Like it was just like I remember as a fan, I'm like, okay, I enjoy the game. I have a passion for the game. But for someone who is kind of just, if we're trying to expand this to the casual audience, we're trying to expand this, like Gears is like like Overwatch. Like I watch that and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Like and it's so hard to like break that down and like understand that. And then them making like all these last minute like mechanic changes, and all the people going off on the devs on the Twitch stream, like that was just a wild time, man. Like where do you see Gears esports going? Like do you kind of see it kind of like just sunsetting? Do you see it kind of like coming back into the forefront? Like what's your kind of take on that?
I think I think Gears 5 um had and has all the tools that it needs to be
Yes,
a
dude.
really strong game in esport. I think that the decisions made around the esport, I think that the decisions made balancing and around the game were very, very poor.
Yeah.
I think things were rushed. Um, and I think that's put us in a very difficult spot as like the competitors of the game. And I think it's on multiple fronts, right? Like 5v5, like we've seen COD go back to 4v4. I
Yep. Yep.
think Gear should go back to 4v4. Because that's going to lower the barrier of entry for orgs who want to compete. That's going to increase the number of teams. That's going to increase the amount of teams that are actually good at the game. Because you're going to get one player from every one of the top four teams. That's a top
It's the
roster right
top.
there.
Yep. Yep.
In theory, right?
Yep.
Um, so I think all of those things. I think the game mode that we play, escalation, is convoluted and way too complicated for
Yeah.
anyone to understand, while also being, as a competitor and as a coach, so shallow strategically that it's boring. So like you've got the players getting bored because it's so basic,
Right.
and like one meta is the same meta for the entire year because there's no changes. And meanwhile, as a spectator, it's difficult to watch, like you said.
Yeah.
Um, so and then we asked for things that, like, rather than getting what we asked for, they're like, "All right, we hear you. So here's our idea." Like we wanted old school single life execution as a game mode, but with a change that prevents stalemates, because that was the issue with Gears like
Yep.
years ago.
Oh yeah.
Was it
Oh
was
yeah.
this long drawn out, two teams would fight, run away, and then never see each other again, and
Bro,
the
I
round
could
would end as
stand
a
it.
draw, and they have to repeat it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody liked watching that. We didn't like playing it because it was boring. So our solution was like add some sort of mechanic that forces us back, add a ring that closes in. There's 400 BR games that can do it. Like
Right.
add it to execution, right? Um, and instead we got gridiron, which like is not fun. Like none of the pros like gridiron, right?
Mm-mm.
So it's like there's just so many things like that happening that um are so unfortunate, right? And a lot of developmental decisions that now are getting better. It's just, but like they've already done a lot of damage up until this point. Like the
Yeah.
game's been out over a year, and it took a year for the games to start making changes in a positive direction.
Right. Right.
Um, from my understanding, mostly due to one person.
Yep.
So it's like it's a really weird situation because right now we're seeing the esport, its prize money got cut by 75%.
Yep.
Last year we competed for a total prize pool across all the events and game, things of $2 million. This year it's 500,000. So that's tough. We've got COVID, which means there's no live events, and because people are idiots, there's not going to be any for a while, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so I think that in terms of like everything, like those signs, it's like rough. It's like, this feels like the downfall, right? But in
Mm.
terms of the development of the game, they're making positive changes. So they're making the game fun to play. They're testing like playlists that have 4v4. They're, doing a developer playlist that like is
Yep. Yep.
our feedback as pro players. They're listening to our feedback now instead of going, "Yep, I hear you, fuck you." And so, like,
Yeah.
we feel like we're actually giving constructive criticism again, that's actually being implemented into the game and then getting positive feedback. So I think things on that end are looking good. It's just so hard to tell when you have the prize pool being cut and the like COVID hitting with so
Yeah.
no live events, which is where a lot of like Gears's energy is, the
Oh,
live
bro.
event experience
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
the hype and the trash talk and stuff like
Oh,
that.
dude, I'll never forget my first Gears event that I got to go to. It was the New Orleans 2017 Halo and Gears, like the MLG
Mm,
combined one.
yeah.
I went purely for Halo, just
Mhm.
because like that's more the storyline I'm attached to. But uh, I couldn't help but notice, even just on the side stations, hearing Icy just completely mouth off on one of the side stations all the way across the building. I could hear them over the Halo casters. I'm just like,
Yeah.
let me go over there.
Yeah, yeah, that was a fun event. That was our first event with, the roster that we have right now, actually, so
Yeah,
that or not right now, but that we had at the time.
yeah,
It was, like, right after a roster change. Yeah, that was a fun event, but, there's been so many positive strides and then so many taken back
yeah.
between Gears 4 and Gears 5, so I'm just hoping things keep moving in a positive direction. I hope that the prize pool cut is temporary, and I hope that they start doing things that, um help the esport. Like it feels like there's just been this like artificial help, like
Yeah,
I don't know, like content series they tried that were just like odd decisions and not done well.
right.
But God knows how much money was put into those and time and resources. So it's like I don't know. I have a lot of like healthy criticism for the esport, and I completely my stance on it is given everything that's happened recently, I fully support and understand why Mental left.
Oh yeah,
Um, so that's he made the right decision, and I hope that for because of my love for Gears, I hope that things turn around.
yeah.
But it's kind of one of those things where now at this point I have trust issues, so we'll wait and see what happens.
Right. I think it's a common thing though. You're starting to see companies change, and I think, in my opinion, Treyarch my opinion, is one of the first companies or first game developers that I've seen actually listen to their players and make real time changes, even before the game has even come out. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, I think it's Tony Flame. I can't remember what his name is on Twitter, but he's a developer, and like, the moment that PlayStation wanted FOV sliders, for
Hmm.
the game in the beta, he tweeted out the next day like, fuck it, man, here you go. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
they just seem like their feedback loop is bar none. And I think that's one of the main problems of like the new way of doing things, where it's like the people who play the game need to have a say. Obviously, it's the developer's game. It's like it's their passion. There's people working behind the scenes, like this is their baby, and
Yeah.
so it's like that. What's that healthy mix of like, man, hey, we hear you, but we can't compromise certain things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I definitely get that aspect of it. I think the problem was Gears 5 tried their idea of growing the game's player base was to make it more readily available and easy to play,
yeah.
um, to copy what COD does. Because COD, like anybody can pick up the game for the first time and get a kill in their very first multiplayer
Hmm.
match and
Hmm.
feel good because it's like, I killed that guy. I feel rewarded. I want to keep killing other people in the game. So I'm going
Yeah.
to keep playing. And in Gears, you could play 40 games and never kill somebody and get annoyed and pissed off and like, God, this
Quit.
game's so hard. I never want to play it again. And
Right.
it's those who like push past that that really started to get the enjoyment of that first kill and that first head pop and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they wanted to make it easier. They wanted to make it more readily available, so it was on Xbox Game Pass. And I think the problem with that was it became too easy. The game's skill level got brought down, so at a pro level, it was a lot of decisions that sound great on paper to grow the player base, but you're
Sure.
also not growing a player base that's going to be retained.
Yep.
It's like a shotgun approach. Like they're throwing a bunch of darts and hoping that a lot of them hit on the board and stick. And you're also hurting the esport in that core player base that's been here, been supporting the game, and are your billboards and out there
Yeah.
playing it every single day, or and are the ones that you're telling and asking to stream it. But
Yeah.
why would
Right.
we when we get Game Pass Timothy on our team in ranked matches? You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like a weird double-edged sword, and I think they took one path and it didn't work, and now they're learning the lesson the hard way from that, and they're trying the other path. It's just hoping it's not too late.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and you even from even from what Halo's doing. Like, like I'm just starving for just every piece of content that comes out from that channel. But it's just like they heard the feedback. And same thing with 343. 343 has been in a very tough position. Like, I don't envy those guys one bit. Like, because it's
Yeah,
just like Bungie exited on a masterpiece. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
Halo 3, that was just a absolute masterpiece. I think Halo Reach. But they have literally the release from Master Chief Collection was bots from the beginning. Then you
yeah,
introduce a game that is completely different, not only mechanically but art style as well. You create this divide in the community. All of a sudden, you take 6 years, almost 6 years to develop a game. It's just like,
yeah,
bro, like I think they're finally getting it though. The
yeah.
recent like, okay, we're having Esports Engine run our competitive tournaments. That was a huge W. Like
Yeah,
Adam,
massive.
massive, because you got the guy who literally basically invented MLG like logistics, running
Yep.
that company. Like you got someone
Yeah,
who knows it.
esports engine is tremendous, and like that's another thing too. Like what our first partnership with
Yeah.
was with PGL for Gears,
Yeah.
and it's like what I know after like some time that there were other companies, including Esports Engine, who put in bids. Why the hell did we end up with a company that does only Dota and
Right.
Counter Strike out of like Romania or some shit? So they don't even like barely speak English, and you're trying to work with like the Gears community, which is kind of ghetto on its own. Like, how are you thinking that's going to end up being successful? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like, yeah, Halo, like I Tashi, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
their
Yeah.
esports guy.
Yeah.
He's making so many incredible moves,
Yeah.
both things that I've heard behind the scenes, but even the public stuff, like announcing the partnership with Esports Engine. Like I saw that and I was like, yeah, I would go to Halo.
There's
Like I
hope.
if
Yeah.
yeah, I would go coach a Halo team like
Yeah.
easily, hands down. It's just like it's so it's such a step towards keeping the roots of what made Halo events fun,
Mm-hmm.
while also knowing that they're going to do a good job of pushing it into the future because they have
Exactly.
so much experience. They did such a phenomenal job as MLG and Activision with COD, and you can only expect great things from them.
Right. Yeah, and I think they nailed it when it came to, like, I know there's a lot of debate on the art style and the mechanics and all this stuff of sprint and no sprint, and
Hmm.
we won't even get into that. It's just I'm so tired of talking about it at this point. But like, they were charged even within the game of like, how do you make the original fan base happy but still evolve it for the new Zoomers who are going to be competing and bringing in the money ultimately to this organization?
Yeah.
And that's just a job I don't envy. Like, I like,
No.
especially Tashi, and I'm not sure if you know Menke. He's the Josh Menke. He's the guy who does all of the competitive stats and like the MMR and CSR
Uh
balancing.
huh.
So those two like have some of the thickest skin on Twitter I think I've ever seen. Like,
Oh, they have to.
bro, they just go. It's just day after day of getting roasted, by little Timmys. Like it,
Yeah.
and it's got to be the most frustrating thing. So it's we're in this weird drought of like, people are just starving for a Halo, but if you fuck it up, we're never gonna forget, and it's just gonna bury the franchise. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't envy them not one bit, but kind of wanna bring it back a little bit, man. Thanks for kind of indulging that with me. It's I like those tangents, but I want to wrap it up by kind of like having your perspective. Like, if there's someone who kind of has the skills or has the ability or is wanting to kind of strive to be a coach in the scene, what's kind of like one piece of advice you'd give someone just starting out?
Um, my advice to anybody who wants to be a coach in any esport, honestly,
Mm,
I don't think it's specific for Gears. I think if you want to be a coach, you have to understand your game. You have to like know enough about the game that you can build a reputation of being, um, intelligent when it comes to the gameplay. Knowing how the game should play, knowing realistically how the game does play. Because right now in Gears, those are two different things.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you have to have an open mind and be able to take criticism, be able to take feedback, be able to work with your players like we said like way earlier in this. Different people learn differently, so be able to understand that. My degree, luckily it plays into coaching and player managing, is in psychology and social science. So
Mm,
what I studied in college, or what I ended up eventually studying in college and getting the degree for, was understanding why people think the way they do and cultural differences and things like that. So, um, being able to take a step back and go, okay, they're thinking or reacting this way because of some outside factor, and here's how to better relay information to them to help them achieve their goals. I think that's super important for coaches, even if you don't have a degree in psychology or social science or
Yeah.
anything related to that. I think, just being a good human being kind of gives you that instinct of like, okay, maybe I need to approach this from a different way. I don't think I don't think having an ego or like a pride in that sense, um, ever ever will pay off in
Yeah.
terms of coaching. And honestly, the other thing would be like the same thing to any player or any coach: content is king. Putting yourself out there and showing people why there's a reason that you have credibility. Um, being able to, you know, do VOD reviews and you know, coach anybody at any level and be able to like help develop people. I think you have to be able to want to help people. I think like that drive really
Yep.
is important. A lot of people coach because like I can't play, so I'll coach. And it's like,
Mm.
well, do you want to coach? Do you want to help people, or is it just like an option that you feel is there because nothing else worked? Like, you know, I think there's 8 coaches, so to speak. So I think yeah, that would be my advice. Like, understand people, like learn differently and behave differently for different reasons. Understand your game, be willing to grow and learn with your team, or whoever you work with, and make content.
Fantastic, man. Dude, I really appreciate it, Ash. This is a blast. Where are you the most active? Where can people find you on social media?
Most active on Twitter. I would like to
Mhm.
say it was Twitch and YouTube, but I've been struggling to find time to do that. But Twitter at thyAshes, Instagram at thyAshes, YouTube is thyAshes, Twitch is thyAshes. Shout out to the people who took regular ashes on all those platforms and doesn't use it, asshole. But yeah, I'm active on Twitter. I got to get back in the upload and grind. So, but yeah, I'm
Fantastic, man.
across them all.
I'll go ahead and for those who like convenience, I'll go ahead and put put the links below. That way you can go and find them there. But um, Ash, man, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a fantastic day.
Thank you, man. Pleasure's all mine.